Mr. President,
Senator from Florida.
ask that the quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. President, I rise today to speak about the incident that occurred on Christmas Day when our nation was targeted by a terrorist who attempted to bring down a plane with 278 passengers and 11 crew members. This attack would have resulted in mass casualties. Thankfully, it did not occur, much in part due to the vigilance of nearby passengers and for the grace of God that this terrorist was unable to detonate the explosives that he carried with him under his clothes. But, Mr. President, we should be responding as if the worst happened. What would we be doing today if that plane had exploded over the skies of Michigan and all of its passengers had died? When the plane landed, the Nigerian terrorist Umar Farouk Abdulmutallab was taken into custody and questioned by authorities. But what happened next is very worrisome. Instead of treating Mr. Abdulmutallab like the terrorist that he is, like the enemy combatant that he was afforded all of the protections of the United States Constitution as if he was a United States citizen. He was provided his Miranda rights, the right to remain silent, the right to have an attorney, the information that if he did not remain silent, it could be used against him. And, of course, as best we know, once he was provided with these rights, he stopped talking to those who were questioning him. So what information did we fail to learn? What information about Yemen, the newest breeding ground for al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups who are launching attacks against our country? What information did we fail to learn? What did we fail to learn about the next attack that is coming, whether it will be again in an airplane or another type of terrorist attack? Those questions were not asked, and they could not be answered because we treated the terrorist like an American citizen. We gave him all of the constitutional protections, yet those protections were never meant for people we are fighting against in a war. And, Mr. President, that is why I come today to the floor of the United States Senate, because we are treating these terrorists, from the Christmas Day bomber to Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who we are going to try in a federal court in New York, a civilian court, we are treating them as if they are common criminals. And in so doing, we are losing ground in the war on terrorism. And we cheapen the value of being an American citizen with all the rights that are afforded to us when we grant terrorists who seek to end our way of life with those same protections. Why are we providing Miranda rights and other constitutional protections to terrorists at the expense of the security of the American people? Who in our government is making this decision? Who is saying that these terrorists should have these rights? Who made the decision to Mirandize the Christmas Day bomber and treat him as a criminal defendant instead of an unlawful enemy combatant? I think, Mr. President, instead of treating this as a criminal law enforcement action, we need to recognize that we are at war. Now, it is not the kind of war that our grandfathers fought in World War II or our fathers fought in Vietnam. It is what they call an asymmetrical war. But it is a war nonetheless. And the people who are waging this war against us are trying to destroy the America as we know it, not unlike the enemies that we've had in our past wars. And we lose the edge against these enemies in this war by failing to gain the information that we could gain, should gain, from lawful and proper interrogation. Information that's not gained soon as Miranda rights are given. This week, the Director of National Intelligence, Dennis Blair, the National Counterterrorism Center Director Michael Leiter and the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano all testified before committees of this Congress and this Senate surrounding the incident concerning Umar Farouk Abdulmutallab. And each of them admitted that they were not consulted by anyone in the administration, specifically the Department of Justice, on prosecuting Abdulmutallab in a civilian rather than military court. Now, these are the people who are supposedly at the front lines of protecting our homeland and fighting against terrorism. The Director of National Intelligence, a position that was created to stand on top of all of the other intelligence gathering organizations, to break down the silos so that we could gain information and connect the dots, as you hear, which of course did not happen for this event. But that position, the Chief Intelligence Officer of the United States of America, not informed why we were prosecuting Abdulmutallab as a civilian. Michael Leiter, the head of the National Counterterrorism Center, trying to counter the terrorism that's affecting our country. I had the opportunity, Mr. President, to question Director Leiter, and although he was careful not to contradict the administration, it's clear to me that he would rather we treat these enemy combatants as what they are, not as common criminals. So who made this decision? Was it the Attorney General of the United States? Was it the President? Mr. President, whomever made this decision, we need to know that. That information needs to be before the United States Senate, because it is a questionable call at best. In fact, Mr. President, I would submit it's the wrong call to treat these non-American citizens as if they had all the rights that we do. We are losing the war on terrorism if we do not gain the valuable information to stop terrorist attacks before they start. Someone, Mr. President, from this administration needs to come forward and own up to this decision. And I call upon the administration to do so. The American people deserve answers. Our policymakers have to come clean, and we should be able to ask them questions and ask the right person's questions as to why this decision was made. We should not be trying terrorists in civilian courts. We should not be giving them Miranda rights and other constitutional protections. We should be fighting the war on terrorism as if our very lives depend upon it, because they do. Mr. President, I would ask unanimous consent that the following remarks be entered separately in the record.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I rise now to speak about the situation in Haiti and the tragic events that occurred last Tuesday around 5 p.m. when a massive earthquake, measuring 7 points on the Richter scale, occurred near Port-au-Prince, the capital of Haiti. As a senator from Florida, I have a deep connection to the Haitian people because we have more than 200,000 Haitians in our community in Florida. And watching what happened on television and these graphic pictures that we've all seen on the news of the tragedy that has occurred as families have been separated and lost, children have been orphaned. But we've also seen encouraging shots, those of people being rescued. We all saw the shot a couple days ago of the 75-year-old lady who was rescued. Yesterday, a small boy and his sister pulled out of the rubble, amazingly, buried a week alive, and made it out. It gives us hope. But the projections are grim, with perhaps as many as 150,000 Haitians dead. It is a staggering figure. It is a tragic loss of humanity. Last week I was in Miami along with the governor and other officials as we met to talk about what our response would be. We worked with the Coast Guard and Southern Command to make sure that our rescue teams from Miami, who have done work all around the world, would have the opportunity to join the other search and rescue teams to help bring out the living and to find the dead to return them home. And we've been very successful in doing that, and we're very thankful for all of those Americans and very proud, as I am, especially of the ones from Florida who've been doing such great work. While I was down in Miami, I had the chance to go to Little Haiti, which is our largest Haitian American community, and visit the students at St. Mary's School. It is the school next to the Catholic Cathedral in Miami-Dade County, and I visited with Monsignor Terrence Hogan and Sister Jane Stoker, who's the principal of the school. And I saw these beautiful Haitian children who were there in their school uniforms. And they had come to school that morning, it was the day after the earthquake, crying because they have family and loved ones on the island of Hispaniola. And they put their pennies and quarters together to raise $500 to send over to rescue and help the Haitian people. It's a touching story. And the American people have been touched too, because now we know that tens of millions of dollars have been raised. And former President Bush and former President Clinton have come together under the request of President Obama to lead a relief effort so that we all can contribute, and we all must, and we all should. I'm thankful to Rear Admiral Steve Branham of the 7th District of the United States Coast Guard, who has been on the ground and instrumental in making sure that the relief efforts and the Coast Guard's help could be there to help these folks. And one thing specifically that he's been able to help with, I'll talk about in a moment, concerns the students from Lynn University in Boca Raton. But I want to talk, Mr. President, about some of the heroes, some of our Floridians who've been so instrumental in helping the Haitian people. I want to talk about a Fort Pierce-based nonprofit organization called Missionary Flights International that began flying food and supplies to Haiti daily. Since the earthquake, the organization has collected donations and gathered volunteers to load food and water and supplies on their planes. And in one day alone, the organization sent more than 400,000 ready meals to be eaten in Haiti. Another organization, the Big Heart Brigade in Palm Beach, is shipping 140,000 meals ready to eat this week. The Big Heart Brigade provides meals to many in South Florida, but in the wake of the tragedy, they focused their efforts on Haiti. I want to talk about a Mr. Hank Asher, who I happen to know well in Boca Raton, Florida, who immediately took his plane and started flying in doctors and nurses from Jackson Memorial and needed supplies into Haiti and brought back the wounded and the injured back to Florida. And we were able to give him some assistance in trying to get in and out shortly after the disaster. But the good people of Florida and the good people of this country are opening their hearts and their wallets and their pocketbooks to help the people of Haiti, and as they should. I look forward to going to Haiti once the search and rescue portion is over, in order to assess the situation myself and see what else I can do to help that nation recover. Mr. President, I also, as I mentioned a minute ago, want to talk about the Lynn University students. Many folks watching this on television today have seen the parents of these students. Now, there were 12 there with faculty members, and some of them were able to get home. They were recovered and returned, but alive. But now we know that there are 4 students still missing and 2 faculty still missing. And we remain hopeful that these young ladies and their 2 faculty members will make it home back to Florida. We have Christine Giannacassi, Stephanie Crispinelli, Courtney Hayes, and Brittany Jengel, along with faculty members Patrick Hartwick and Richard Bruno. I've been talking to Dr. Ross, the president of Lynn University, and my office, along with other members of Congress, have been trying to assist in the efforts to find these students that were in the Hotel Montana, which fell shortly after the earthquake. Mr. President, yesterday I sent a letter to Secretary Clinton, Administrator Shaw, and Secretary Gates, and I'd ask unanimous consent that a copy of this letter, dated January 21st, 2010, be entered into the record at the conclusion of my remarks. In that letter, we have asked that the search and rescue efforts continue. We saw the miraculous discovery of that young boy and young girl yesterday. There are people potentially still alive, buried in the rubble, and we must continue while there is some hope to look for survivors. But if there are no survivors, we request in this letter that their loved ones be brought home so they can be here in the United States. And it's a request, I think, that we all understand. And we've been working with Secretary Clinton's office, and we know that they share the same view. But I wanted to bring that to the attention of the United States Senate. As a parent of young children, I cannot imagine the loss and the feeling of loss that these parents from Lynn University and others who are still waiting for the recovery, potential recovery as the days grow longer and the hours go by, of their family members, and especially the loss it must be for these parents, the idea of losing a child. Mr. President, there's nothing more tragic than you can think of. So our hearts go out to them. They are in our prayers, and we look forward to the hopeful return of these students and faculty, but if not their return alive, then at least bringing them home so that they can have rest and peace back in the United States of America. With that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.